So this is what happens. I began this colloquium even without introducing myself. My name is Ji-Soo Kim. I'm in History Department at GW. I'm one of the co-conveners of this colloquium, and I would like to emphasize again and thanking Professor Kim Renaud for her continued support and help, and I'd like to thank her being very patient with me when I kept on sending really literally hundreds of emails asking all the questions about the preparation. Thanks once again. Now we would like to begin the first session, and our first speaker is, as Professor Kim Renaud just mentioned, is really one of the most renowned speakers of the Uige documents. And please welcome Professor Lee Sang-mi.
My job is today something that's almost impossible because I have to introduce this vast amount of material in 30 minutes. So, by the way, do you have my text? We handed in our papers in advance. I thought you printed them out. Okay, that's fine. May I have show of hands? How many of you do know something about Uige? Okay, it's less than half. So I thought I would just go through basic things about Uige at the beginning, and then sample important aspects of all these Uige documents, and then in conclusion, I will present what we can get out of all these endless amount of information in advancing our understanding of Korean history, culture, and particularly, since I'm an art historian, art history. So I'll go through, forget about my text, and then I will go through the PPTs very fast. This is the first character of the term Uige. So it's all self-explanatory, so I will not read them. So when I was in Washington, D.C., more than 10 years ago, when my husband was the ambassador here, my husband wanted me to do a short lecture during the lunchtime at the embassy for his staff. So I did that. And then at the end of the lecture, people were coming out. And I heard somebody saying, after all, I thought Uige was a clothing chest, because if you write characters differently, the first one, Ui, can also have a character meaning clothing, and Kwe has a character meaning chest. So at least that much I accomplished during the lunchtime. So I decided that the translation, we have to actually make it clear what this is. Book of State Rights, that's what I decided. And then there are other English translations such as these, but none of them are complete, but I will not explain why. No time. And then during the early 15th century, during the time of King Seongjong, there was a book published, 국조 오례의, or Five Rights of the State. And the 5 rights are ancestor worship rights, celebratory rights and royal weddings, reception of foreign envoys, military rights, royal funeral, and other related rights. So these are the important 5 rights. And all these things were performed in utmost formality, and after all these things, in most cases, Uyghur books were created. By the way, I will be just using some terms once I explain, and I feel that we have to teach the Westerners some of the terms, because Japanese people do that all the time. Everybody knows what kimono is. So, like kimono, you have to learn what Uyghur means. And there will be several other terms that you will be learning today. Now, all the Uyghur documents produced before the Japanese invasion of Korea at the end of the 16th century were all but destroyed. But we have so many still left. So these are the places where they are kept. And Yonggi just explained the return of the royal viewing Uyghurs from the Bibliothèque Nationale de France. I will be referring to it as BNF. As of end of May 2011, and then many more came back to Korea from the imperial household affairs. So we have all existing Uyghurs now in Korea except for the one in British Library in London. This one is really a very excellent book in terms of illustrations, but it was sold. It was a public property. Somehow it was sold to British Library, and there's no way we can claim unless we hope for their mercy. So the Uyghur that were kept in the BNF library is the ones that were stored in this little building in Ganghwa Island, and it's called Ue Kyujangak, Outer Kyujangak, meaning that this is another Kyujangak that's like the branch of Kyujangak in Seoul. So this is the picture from the end of 19th century album. And what is important about things here is that most of the things that were kept in here were the best copies, royal viewing copies. And Yonggi talked about the invasion of French Navy, so I will not go through again. That's the look of Hahn Island with French naval ships. They are coming onto the land and all these buildings, including the Ue Kyujangak Library. And then only in 2003, this was rebuilt. Looks small, but kept really the important items of the late Joseon period. Now, most people think that all Uyghur books have illustrations, especially Panchado or this. If you know the characters, Panchado is rank, positions, painting, positioned painting. So I will just say Panchado from now on for this procession painting. So as you can see, of all 637 categories of Uyghur books, only 163 or only 26% of them contain Panchado, whereas the B and F Uyghur contain a lot more than the general percentage, because so many of them concerned with the funeral rites or wedding rites. So now I have to tell you the difference between the royal viewing copies and the history archive copies. When until 1795, all Uyghur books were handwritten and hand copied, hand painted. But the cover and the binding and the inside the characters and the illustrations were quite different, because royal viewing copies are all neatly written and well illustrated with red page boundaries, whereas the history archives copy is not so neatly written, and you can, as you turn the page, you can see the change of hands. So, with this general introduction, I will go into 5 rites of the state. The first one is ancestor worship rites. Actually, it has a lot more than ancestor worship rites. It includes rites to the heaven and earth and other minor gods. But since we don't do much of those, I will just show you the Chongmyo ancestral rites. This one is the front view of Chongmyo, and the current Chongmyo building is the largest existing wooden structure in the world, and the front width is 101 meters, so it's about 112 or 13 yards. And so annual ancestral rites are being performed once a year by the descendants of the Yi royal family. And it's open to public, and you can go and have a look. The first Sunday of May. Just show you the scenes, no time to explain. Oh, I have to tell a little bit about this dance. It's called 팔일무, but Korea is the only place where this age-old Chinese tradition have been kept intact. So this dates back to the time of Confucius, but we are the only country in the world who still maintain this. So it's beautiful. And then Chongmyo Uyghur all explain how the rites should be conducted with utmost sincerity and formality and so on. But Chongmyo Uyghur is different from other Uyghurs in that it's not a record of one particular event, but it has something, it explains how Chongmyo building evolved over the years and what kind of rules were applied to who stays in the main hall and whose spirit tablets will be moved to another building called Yeongnyeongjeon. And so there is no 반차도. It's a kind of history of Chongmyo, institution of history. And so it has a lot of these illustrations of important costumes and ritual utensils and so on. And then this is another separate book. It's a very large book, 85.8 centimeters. So I think this is the largest book in the world I have seen. I've seen quite huge early Christian manuscript, but it's not as tall as this. This is narrow, but it comes something like this from 85 centimeters. But it has all the things about what is in these cabinets in each of the 19 spirit tablet rooms in Chongmyo. So in this cabinet, you can find these treasures. And they are bamboo book, jade seal, and letter of appointment bestowed to crown grandson, later King Cheongjo, by King Yeongjo in 1759. So by doing this, they want to perpetuate the history of the Joseon dynasty and legitimacy of the Joseon royal lines. The second one is Karye. Karye, the character Ka means beautiful and celebratory. So there are so many in this category, but I'm talking about just two things. The first one is this idea of investiture, right, of Crown Prince, later Gyeongjong. And there are 5 of these remaining today, but since this is the earlier and clearer thing that I'm showing you. So it explains how the ceremony of investiture, right, is being performed, first of all, making all these ritual items and bringing them to the palace in this kind of procession. And then they go through certain rites at the palace, mostly in Injeongjeon during this period, because Gyeongbok Palace in Seoul was the main palace, but it was burnt during the Japanese invasion and was not rebuilt until the 1864. So, this is the Crown Prince's palanquin, and this small palanquin is carrying the King's letter of appointment, or Gyomyeong. Gyomyeong is very important. And then here you have the Crown Prince's honor guards with flags and ritual weapons. These are all very beautiful procession of the event and something to watch for the people. And so during the Joseon dynasty, everybody came out to the street to watch these processions. And so we find the term 관광 인민 in the veritable record of the Joseon period, Joseon 왕조실록. Nowadays, 관광 is really the key word in Korean cultural scene. So many foreigners come to Korea for 관광, to look at the scenery and other events. So we have this for Joseon dynasty's people. Another aspect of Karye is the wedding event, and there are 20 의궤s throughout the Joseon period we still have. But King Yeongjo's second wedding, 1759, is the most famous because we have this B and F copy and History Archives copy in Korea that we can compare. And this is the king's palanquin. Earlier, only the queen's palanquin could be seen because the procedure was different. Earlier, only the king or the groom did not go to meet the bride because he just sent a messenger to bring her to the palace from the 별궁, or the separate residence for the crown princess to be. But sometime slightly before this period, the details of the rite changed to that the king or the groom had to go and get her to Pyeolgung and bring her, of course, not in the same palanquin. They don't ride together. I wish they did, but they didn't. And so this is the king's palanquin, and you will see that all the people surrounding him are all male. And the doors are all open. But in Queen's palanquin, the curtains are all closed, and you will see female attendants guarding her on either side. See the palanquin. And then I found out important things about the difference between royal copy and history archives copies. Can you see the difference in detail? What is important is the way of course the palanquin themselves are different, but this one, history archives copies, don't have the bars and the strings, so it's hovering in the air. Another different illustration, but I know I don't have time. And this reception of foreign envoys, mostly Chinese envoys, it's called binle. Bin means guests. So here, Korean, this was the one in 1608, Gwang Hae-gun's period. This Chinese chief envoy, it has label called Cheonsa. And Cheonsa has another meaning, angel. But here, that doesn't mean angel, but it means Chinese emperor's emissary. So he came to mourn King Injo's death. And we have this procession painting in this figure, and shows this is very important and interesting. It says 부물체여, which means bestowal objects, silk palanquin. And you can see that in wedding affairs, all the palanquins are all beautifully painted in color, but since this is funeral-related thing, it doesn't have any colorful painting. And then look at the live animal coming. I mean, I'm sure by this time it's dead, but a cow and a pig and a lamb, three of them were seen in this procession painting. So it's very interesting to see different kinds of illustration in the Panchato. And the musicians are here, but during the funeral, they're not supposed to play music. So they don't play music, but attend in the procession. Let's see. Is there time? How many? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. This Professor Park Jung-hye will go into, but this is the only one 의궤 of military rights during the reign of King Yeongjo. He wanted to have Korean military strength during, by this time, Korea became very strong after the two invasions, Japanese and Chinese, but he was determined to have a strong military. So he revived this ancient military right. And there are 12 pages of illustrations, but I'm showing you only the first part that has something to do with the king's archery rite. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pages. Here is the king's canopy and all of his attendants, and his sedan, his palanquin is parked here, and the yellow flag here it has dragon, 2 dragon painting in here, but not shown. But it's the symbol of king or king's presence. So all these musicians are here. They actually did play music. And then this is interesting. That's the target. If a king shoots, I don't know exactly, somewhere around here, the arrow should come right here. So what I did was I put these 4 vertically, like this, to make one scene. And you see that the target is upside down. And the guy here is standing, he's supposed to catch the arrow. The king will not kill him. And so this is interesting because you have to imagine the space here from the king's canopy to the target. You have to sort of imagine the enclosed space. Then it has to have this upside down target. I didn't bring the slide, but there's another illustration of the same event in Korea University and elsewhere, but they don't show it upside down. They didn't understand the spatial character of this thing. So this is really an interesting aspect of Uige illustration. And Uige of funeral state rite, very, very complicated. So I don't think I have time, but there are 4. This one, 빈전, 혼전. 빈전 is where the king's coffin stays until the funeral day proper. And that's the funeral Uige. And this one is the construction of royal tombs, which takes about 4 or 5 months time since after his death. And then Bumyo, this one is finally, after 27 months of the funeral, the king's spirit tablet is moved to the Chongmyo royal shrine. So it has, let's see, this Uige has procession, and Sanmyeong, or the royal tomb doesn't have, but Bumyo also has procession of the spirit tablet going to the Chongmyo. So there's so many paintings in this. And this is King Injo's BNF copy, 1649. And this, now you can see the difference, the white costume for the funeral of most of the people here. But now from here, it's the procession of newly installed king. After 5 days, the crown prince assumes the kingship, and that's his normal honor guard. And then others are all white, and these guys are interesting. That only appears in the funeral Uige, and that's called 방상시. And it's kind of demon peddler. So he goes into the royal tomb and tries to chase out anything, any bad spirits that might be in there, so before the burial. And then funeral bier proper. And that's, I took this from a different one, very scary look of Hang-Sang-shi, so that he can chase out the demon spirits. And then funeral bier proper, very large palanquin, and right behind the funeral bier is the section where wailing palace ladies are discreetly hidden in these drapes. And then these are the other princes. And I took this Emperor Sejong's state funeral in 1926. You can see so many people carrying the bier. So I have to go through just the pictures now. Here is the interesting aspects of the 4 animals that decorated a small house-shaped structure which was put beside the tomb before the king's coffin was laid into the chamber. And so you know about the 4 deities, like the Goguryeo period, the painting. So these 4 animals or deities of the Goguryeo period got changed a great deal in form and style. King Injo's tomb and King Jeongjo's tomb. But these we can see only in Uyghurs, because that small structure called Changung had to be burned after the burial. So we don't have any of these except for in Uyghur illustrations. So that's the end of the 5 rites, but there are so many other Uyghurs outside of 5 rites. And this is Uyghur royal portraits. This Panchado is from Uyghur copying 7 past kings in copying 7 past kings' portraits. And this is during the Hahn Empire period. And so the soldiers all wore modern costume. And these are all yellow in accordance with the imperial rite. So this large palanquin carries Emperor Taejo, and they all renamed the past kings as emperor. So it's called emperor. And this is too long to go through, but interesting things can be found in these Uyghur, how the painters were selected and so on. So this just, I will just let you have a quick look at the, what is important here is the, not only the painters should have excellent skills, but also they should abide by the Confucian virtues, not to put any artist to work when they were in mourning period for their parents, 3 years most of the time. And then a painter's ancestors should be free from treason. It is very important. And so I will just skip all these things. This is to show how many times King Gojong sat for his painters. He sat for his painters more than 50 times, because this is after the influence of Western painting came to Korea during the early 18th century. So they wanted to have the real look of the king when they paint. And then these are the illustrations of 5 big screens. And this is what I think is really important. Not only the illustrations, but the texts of the Uige document book serve as visual and documentary evidence for the study of Joseon culture in general and study of history of art. So let's see. What I found out is that we have so many of these huge, colorful paintings everywhere in Korea, but until before the 20th century, or I should say, before the research of Uige documents, simply they were called minhwa, or folk paintings, because they were so different from the literati ink paintings. They're too colorful, and Yangban shouldn't have such colorful things, they thought. But in fact, these were created and used in palaces for specific purposes. So I found out so many documents relating to, this is 5 feet screen, and then this is 10 symbols of longevity, mostly used for weddings and for banquets. And this peony screen is also for weddings and also for funeral. It's very interesting. And this is a story of a Chinese person, but he is a symbol of happy life. So this became favorite screens for weddings since the early 19th century. In fact, 1802 is the first year this screen appears in wedding documents. And then this is interesting. We only have one reference to peacock painting in the 1828 court banquet Uige, but we find not this kind of single independent painting of peacocks, but we have sections of multi-panel screens in which we find images of peacocks. And peacocks are for the king, not for the ladies. So I wrote a paper on these palace paintings recently, actually, and how these paintings were used in the palace and how, for whom these paintings were painted. So usually if there is an event, a king should be surrounded by the 5 big screens. And ladies have several different kinds of screens. So these were all spelled out very clearly. And then we value this section called 공장지, or section on Uige, Yeongjo's wedding showing list of artisans. And so we have names of artisans, not only the names, but different names, different variety of the handicraft. So these are all from Uige that I found. And then I compared the list of painters and artisans with existing documentary records. And I found that so many more of the artisans and painters' names were listed in these documents. So it was a great discovery. And then another section that I was interested in 상장, or awards. After each event, the court bestowed gifts to all the participants. So the yellow section is for the Prime Minister Nam Gong-chol. He's a very famous person. He got a head of horse here, Ne Guma in Chinese character. This means the best horse trained and groomed and kept in the royal stable. So he got that. And then the second person got the just trained horse, something like that. And all of you know that now in Korea, the best car is called ekkus. So this is exactly that. So all the ministers, I think, ride ekkus. So comparison is very interesting. And then what is most fascinating is this one, which is change of social status from good people to, from the outcast to good people. So during the Joseon period, basically there's these two, Yangmin and Cheonmin. And Yangmin can be Sanong Gongsang. But if you are born in Cheonmin, your descendants are all in Cheonmin, outcast. So this is the only chance. Or I found another records of this change of status, which is if you catch a thief or something, you do valiant things for the society, then you can ask for change of status. But once you become Yangmin, then your descendants will all be Yangmin from that time on. So this is a great social movement, social status movement, very important. And Uyghur has plenty of information on this. And this is King Yeongjo's time, that in 1767, some of the palace ladies and performers got this change of status, revolutionary thing. And so another thing that I would like to show last is this thing, Chang'anmun in Hwasong. This is in the Uyghur of 1801, Hwasong Seongnyeok Uyghur. And this is the second Uyghur that was printed in metal print, and illustrations were all done in woodblock prints. And when the UNESCO people came to examine evaluate the Hwasong citadel, they were surprised for the beauty of this citadel, but they were more surprised by the fact that this kind of Uyghur recording all aspects of Chang'an, the citadel construction was kept, and during the reconstruction of this citadel in 1975 to 79, this Uyghur was almost instrumental in reconstructing this building. So Uyghur documents were so valuable, both in illustration and contents, to let us understand better the Joseon dynasty's court culture. Thank you.